Afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon, guys. I can see some familiar faces here, some new faces. Byron, Eben.
Hello, Kumaran.
Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hey, Eben. Nice to see all the old famous guys still joining us. We'll give it a couple minutes. Just waiting for the rest of the guys to join in. Where we up to now? Let's see.
Kums, you make us sound like we're very old.
Byron,
Like old faces. I mean, you the one with the grays there, right? You making us sound like we're much older than we are.
all my grays came from you guys.
Yeah, Byron, you'd think you're like 60, buddy, and you're like 24. So it's so weird that he would say old guys.
How's it, Louis?
How you, buddy?
Good in yourself.
Good,
All the
man.
soldiers, Louis. It's all the soldiers.
Hello, Opa, Louis.
Hey.
Ora, Opa, Eben.
Okay, we're going to give it just maybe 2 or 3 more minutes before we get the rest of the guys in. I see some guys waiting in for the stragglers. What are we up to now in terms of numbers? Okay. 16, 17.
Now we're up to 26 comms, so I think kick off in the next minute or two, and whoever hasn't joined can just hop on when they're ready.
Just swimming into the meeting. Is it pissing in Cape Town?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, looks like. Okay, we're up to 20. I think I'll kick it off and then the rest of the guys can just, because I'm cognizant of time. So we'll just kick off and we can get straight into it. So thank you, guys. Thank you for joining us on another Bytes and Bites event. And I'm pretty certain all you guys received your Uber vouchers, so you guys can get tucked in and start ordering your Uber lunch and get tucked in while we kick this off. Sorry? Someone.
Don't worry, it was just someone who was off mute. It was carrying on.
Okay. I'm going to do a quick introduction to Duane Nicol, who joins us from Sendmarc. Duane's our cybersecurity evangelist from Sendmarc that joins us. And Duane comes with 20 years of cybersecurity efficiencies under his belt. He's got 10 years behind him from Sendmarc, and from Mimecast is where he originally comes from. So I'm not gonna steal too much of Duane's thunder and go through all the Sendmarc benefits and all the good stuff that he's gonna go through. But yeah, over to Duane.
Thank you, Kums. And I don't think you could steal thunder because it's obviously on its way to Cape Town, as Michael, myself, and Colin are experiencing this morning. So, yeah, guys, I've got the immense pleasure of presenting this afternoon to you, midweek slot, talking about DMARC. And hopefully I can make it as interesting and as useful as I can. We do obviously ask that if there's any questions or any uncertainties, any clarity you guys require, absolutely use the chat box. We definitely don't just want to hear about Cape Town's pouring weather and Carmen's lovely weather out in Durban. We'd love to have some engaging questions around DMARC if there are any. So please do feel to butt in. With that, guys, I'm going to kick us off, and I'm going to start with a big elephant in the room, right? So I think when it comes to email, and as Kums mentioned, I've spent a long, probably almost 15 years specifically in email around outbound and inbound security. We've seen that the landscape for email just get out of control, right? So, I mean, back in the early days, there were very few select vendors that would protect your that would do inbound protection. So sit at the gateway, make sure no bad stuff enters in the form of links, in the form of attachments, impersonations, etc. And as that kind of got quelled by the big players, as Kums mentioned, you've got your Mimecast, your Proofpoints, Microsoft came to the fore and got better and better at identifying security. You've now got lots of gateways that are doing more API-focused gateways, so your anomalies, your abnormals, etc. What started happening is that hackers started getting smart, and they were like, well, hang on, if we're being quelled in terms of our scale, we've got to look at ingenious ways to attack our customer base, right? We've got to look at ways in which we can identify a target and be more prolific and sophisticated in our attacks. And that's what happened probably about 20 years ago, when the kind of sophistication around DMARC attacks and impersonation and spoofing became far more sophisticated and far more widespread than it is or that it ever was. And over the last couple of decades, it's just gotten more and more like ridiculous. With the introduction of things like, and I have to say the buzzword, with the introduction of AI, yeah, I did it, and large language models, what you essentially give now is the cyber criminal infinite scale. All right, and there's been you can YouTube videos and watch videos around how quickly these guys can launch an attack. A couple of weeks ago, I watched a video of a guy who's never done any hacking in his life. He taught himself how to buy a list of contacts and credentials off the dark web, ran a spoofing analysis, and then sent an email from the Bank of America to 10,000 people in the US. Like, that's how crazy it was, and it took him 28 minutes. This is the guy that's got no previous experience. So you start imagining what this slide's narrative is trying to say is that the greatness of a new technology, and I'm talking about email in its 50, 60-year prime, the greatness of that technology is often harnessed by cyber criminals for nefarious activity, as you'll read in any of the business things that you see nowadays, right? 91% of attacks start in email. Everyone's getting ransomware. Phishing is on the rise, and blah and blah and blah. But it's up to us as obviously the cybersecurity kind of forum to make sure that we're obviously quelling these risks and using the appropriate technologies to do that. What I also don't want to do is sound very ambulance-y chasey, and if I am, I apologize. That's most certainly not the intention of the slide, because I think I'm talking to the absolute converted here. But the damage that I've seen in the last kind of 20 years, which also you can call me OPA cybersecurity, as we said to Louis, when you think about how the damage has evolved in the last kind of probably 5 to 10 years, what I've specifically seen from a threat intelligence perspective, as well as from an email perspective, is that these things are starting to get more chronological. And what I mean by that is 10 years ago, someone would identify a target like a big bank in South Africa, and their prime target would be to impersonate a CEO, someone with authority, and do one of these bad things. Inject ransomware, take over a file location, make people's reputations damaged, make sure that it makes the clicks and brings down the market capitalization. But with the Mimecast kind of a background and having seen how these things permeate through an organization, what was quite crazy is how often they were doing sleight of hand. And what I mean by that is they would often raise these little honeypots where SecOps teams and MDR teams and NOC teams would find these things. And in the background, the big thing is happening. Data exfiltration, huge amounts of deposit fraud, massive amounts of ransomware being injected in other areas of the network. And that was quite interesting. What we identified is that there was an ultimate goal that was hoping to be achieved, and that the ones or twos and the threes, that the small attacks that the SecOps teams or the SOCs were finding were leading up to a far bigger event, right? And that event obviously gets devastating for larger businesses. In most cases, these kinds of things, I think in South Africa's context, any single one of these to a business is detrimental. You've just, I don't know if you guys have seen, but recently there was a business, 164 years old, I think it was, that shut down because they had ransomware injected. And yes, the argument is, but they only had an antivirus software. Absolutely. If you don't take the correct protocols and measures in place, this is the outcome. But you can't argue the fact that most companies are actually far more mature in South Africa than we realize, right? They've got the basics right. They've got their collaboration suites in place. They've got an inbound monitor. They've got things that are looking after the endpoints. They've got. But where we come in, where something that I think is something that's hardly being utilized by the market in general, is taking control and leveraging the three protocols that look after your DNS, right? So SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. And believe me, that's the last time I'm going to try and share any acronyms today. Because the DMARC in and of itself it's blown up to be this hugely complex thing that only the experts can do. And I agree that there is a level of expertise that needs to be deployed in this. But I'm not hiding away from the fact that you can absolutely do DMARC yourself, and we'll touch on that in a later slide. But ultimately, what the world has seen and what the cyber criminals have seen is that, hang on, there's this technology and this protocol, there's this number of protocols that are not being addressed by companies globally. Let's look at what that means. And really, the challenge is that 1% of the world's domains actually implement a DMARC record, and only 30% of those are at reject. It's roughly 400 million domains. So you can imagine the problem is incredibly limitless, because it gives access to literally any company and any hacking authority to go onto a DNS tool, check the domain, check the DMARC record, and if it's not in place, have at them, right? That's where spoofing goes rife, and those happens in two ways. It happens to your customers and your supply chain, or they target you internally, both of which have devastating consequences. So I promise no more acronyms, and hopefully this is going to leverage that. What I think of DMARC, and having worked with DMARC, for a very long time, is that it solves two very simple ideas. It's the email security side, which everyone on this call should be very familiar with. But there's also another side of DMARC, which is often overlooked because it's always being talked up as this security thing. You've got to buy this new thing, and I've got to sell you this thing. And security teams are getting inundated with technology, right? You can imagine the fatigue of listening to guys like me all day and having to make decisions around buying technology. So I think of it, and the way Sendmarc thinks of it, is in a completely different context. We think security is absolutely vital. It's critical. It's important. It's what this forum lives for. But having stakeholders and champions in the business that can see the other side of the outcome of implementing DMARC correctly is just as important. Where things like performance of your marketing campaigns come into play, where ROI and protecting your brand comes into play. Those are often overlooked in the discussions around general DMARC, and that's something I'm going to speak to in the next slide. And this is that slide, right? So when we think of DMARC, both in those two contexts of security and email deliverability and performance, we think of who in the business and who in the organization is typically responsible for this, right? The reality is it's everybody. But if you look at it through a finite lens, it's your security people, it's operations people, and it's marketing people, right? These are the guys that care about certain outcomes that DMARC solves. Right, so I think everyone on this call is familiar with what DMARC does. I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of stuff that you guys are already familiar with. But for those that don't, ultimately what DMARC does is it immediately puts a stop to anyone being able to send unauthorized email from your domain. Full stop. It's why I love DMARC is because it's one of the only technologies in the security space that gives you 100% guarantee that no one can spoof your domain. If your DNS is correct with DMARC, your DKIM is correctly aligned, and your SPF is well optimized. That's an immense win for anyone looking for DMARC. But again, that speaks specifically to the needs and requirements of the security team. When we talk to operational people and marketing people, this conversation is completely different. I mean, I would hate to tell Melissa about how DKIM hosting and SPF optimization works, because she'd probably switch off and start snoring. But I would like to tell her that imagine an email performance where all of your mail is landing up in the inbox, where your wine farms who have thousands of subscribers are receiving mails to the inbox and able to actually act upon those and increase your marketing performance, where the data within your MailChimps and your SendGrids are enriched by data because you can confirm that the mail is landing up in the inbox. It's not just saying delivered. Delivered to what? The junk mail folder in Gmail, arguably the blackest pit of death that ever was to exist, is not somewhere you want marketing emails to go to. Now, as I said, Michael and Colin, you guys are from Cape Town. You probably don't drink as much wine as I do, but I am a subscriber to multiple wine farms. And every time I get a wine farm that I'm subscribed to and a member of into my Gmail black hole of death, i.e. spam, I give them a ring and I say, guys, I got this email 3 months later because I realized I haven't checked my spam in a while, and I'd missed out on the opportunity of getting 3 cases for the price of 2, which is usually how much we consume in a week. Sorry, a month. So And you know, that's a question for a marketing team to have to address. If I'm sending 100,000 emails a month and only 10,000 are going through and only 5% are procuring, what does that mean if you get a multitude of increase in terms of the hundreds of thousands of people going for it, right? And that's something that marketing teams need to address. If we look at the operational leaders in their context, I think this is just as important. So we're busy rolling out DMARC at a major metro municipality in South Africa, and they're moving from traditional to smart city, right? Which means they're going to move away from sending your paper utilities bill, and they're going to send you emails. 56,000 invoices a month landing up in spam. Can you imagine the pressure that puts on things like human resources, where you've now got to have a collections team calling people to get their invoices? Where you've got to have a cash flow issue because people aren't paying them, right? Those are things that we just can't afford.
I think we just lost Duane there.
Oh my goodness, did he press the button? No, I'm joking. Where is Duane?
Let me just have a look here.
If he is in Cape Town, I'm not quite sure if he is, but if he is in Cape
He
Town,
is.
Isn't it,
He is.
maybe he's washed away.
That's
It shows he's still on the call though. That's the weird thing. I'm just checking he'll probably message me very quickly if something has gone wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
while we wait for
Oh, there he is. Oh, this is
How's it
Conrad,
back?
not.
No,
No,
this is
it's Conrad.
Conrad, yeah. So while we're waiting for Duane, I'll just pick up on a little bit of what he was saying, and just to touch on a few things. Like, what's very important is this is not to get confused with, what your current Mimecast is. This is protecting your actual domain, and there's quite a few articles going around in court cases and battles about companies not securing their domains. And I think very importantly and pertinent for you guys on the call, because specifically around if your domain's in breach or there's an issue with your domain, it's on you. You are responsible for that domain. Colin?
I can talk a little bit more about what he was mentioning when he got cut off. Is from a marketing perspective, this is something a lot of people don't talk about.
Yeah. He's back, by the way.
Duane is back. But I'll just finish my train of thought, which is that this is a lot of people concentrate on the security side of this, and trust, having a domain that's trusted or a brand that's trusted and not being spoofed, et cetera. But when I talk about DMARC, I actually talk about the marketing first and foremost. As Duane, as you say, with your wine merchants, I have a couple of those as well. Tons of people that email me, it goes to junk mail, and I'm sure all of you have had this. People will send you a mail, as someone sends you a mail for the first time, and then they send you a WhatsApp and they say, please check your junk mail. That's the type of business that has this problem and has not done this properly. And to me, it's ridiculous in this day and age that you've got to mail someone and then send them a WhatsApp and say, I sent you a mail, can you please check your junk mail folder? Like, whenever you get that, they have not done this properly. And to me, that's it's almost a bigger thing than the security. Sorry, Duane, but for me, it's a huge issue, and it's so easy to solve nowadays.
Yeah, please, I'm glad you want to evangelize the rest of us. I'll give you the mic. But the reality is like there's a realism and there's an impact and an output to doing DMARC rights. And the one thing you said there, which I'll touch on, is that there's loads of ways to do this very meticulously and correctly. So to your point around having to send an email and then WhatsApping. So this, I don't know where you guys lost me. So first of all, apologies that we had some technical difficulty there. But this municipality is sending, tens of thousands of invoices for utilities bills now to their customers. No one's receiving them because they're all going into spam. So they've hired 20 collections analysts who now calls them and says, "Hey, Colin, did you get your invoice?" "No, I didn't." "Okay, can you check your spam folder?" Then they've got to check the spam folder. Imagine the pressure that puts on service delivery's cash flow. It's ridiculous, right? So there's no exact science to this stuff. Okay? And what I mean by that is DKIM, SPF, and DMARC damn it, I said those acronyms again. But DKIM, SPF, and DMARC, not being in place has a far higher impact to your email deliverability and performance as to where they are in place. And that's the kind of thing we rely on when we speak to customers, specifically around column 2 and column 3 here. It's not about what is the performance increase I can expect by just making sure my SPF lookup is less than 10. Well, you can't if you're losing more 14 vendors. And there's no science to it. You just need a vendor to come in and manage these things for you appropriately and give you the best insights that you can act upon. Okay. So again, sorry about that, guys. It's hopefully not put too much of a dent in the flow of today's proceedings. But as I mentioned to you earlier, there are multiple ways to deploy DMARC, right? So the second elephant in the room that I always address is there's ways and means to do this. The first is you can absolutely do it yourself, all right? What we typically see in the market is that loads of customers will just put in a DMARC record to P equals none because that's what the literature explains, as with the Microsoft announcement a couple of months back. We need you to be a minimum of P equals none. Lots of companies get to quarantine on their own, but that's where the stickiness starts creeping in, right? It's difficult to move to reject without having a solid view of who's authorized and who's unauthorized. Because if you do that and you make a mistake, you can actually inadvertently cancel legitimate email. We had this with a customer, adamant they'll do it themselves, had no Salesforce emails going out from their domain for 3 months. Again, detrimental outcome on the fact of doing this yourself. So again, not saying you can't, but it is an incredible challenge. You've then got the market that comes out and says, but we can do DMARC for free and we are cheaper. Absolutely. There's loads of these vendors. If you don't like being able to do things yourself, or you are able to do things based on knowledge-based articles, and you're going to implement this continuously as you make changes to your marketing tools, to your collaboration tools, then this is great. But the reality is that no business gets to do this in a scalable way. So what I always talk about here is most customers will be, a brother or a sister company of another. They've got virtually the same kind of tools that send email on their behalf. And then they go, I want to change from SendGrid to MailChimp. They do all the change controls, they get them right, they move everything across, but they forget to update the DNS, which means that lookup is not implemented, which means, again, there's a marketing performance. With a platform, this stuff is alerted to the vendor in real time, right? And with a managed service that's included in the SLA, we actually deploy this to customers without them even knowing. Hey, we've seen you've moved from MailChimp to SendGrid. Is this true? Yes. Okay, cool. We'll go ahead and implement and set that up as an authorized sender, and it's done within a 24-hour window. No headache, no burden for the SecOps and the managers that look after this stuff. And the third thing, and Kums gave away my secret by saying I was at Mimecast, because I know this is going to sound like I'm saying it, but I'm not. I spent 10 years of my life there. I love that business and I love what they do. But this is for all SIG platforms, right? Where DMARC is an add-on, or any product is an add-on. What I ask customers here is I will never say, don't buy Mimecast's DMARC, you must buy mine. What I'll say is just at a major release. How does your SLA management work? Do you include SPF optimization? Because these are obviously not seen as part of their core function. Mimecast is not a DMARC business. They're in the security business. We are not a SEG business. We are a DMARC business. We have 3-week sprints like any engineering team where we release innovative new things to the platform, and that goes on in perpetuity. There's no hidden costs where we just go, hey, Brian, I would love to charge you for this new feature. It's just included in a simple, predictable way that's charged per user, like every single security person understands and can relate to, which I think is hugely powerful. So in summary of this, you can do it different ways, but often these 3 ways fall very short of having a focused DMARC vendor do this for you. Not do it with you, just do it for you. Where something is simple to understand, these are the challenges that I'm looking to address, and then have those experts go and address them. And this is the summary of what I was talking about in that last slide. This is like the real meat and bones of it all. So being a complete DMARC vendor, there's a few things we believe that a customer and a partner and everyone should get out of the journey with us, right? The first is purchasing experiences with DMARC should be risk-free, okay? And not risk-free after a year, risk-free from day one. Right? If we're not doing the job we set out to do, then we definitely don't want you to be a customer, and you shouldn't want to be our customer. But Kums and Brian will definitely testify to this. Or no, that's not the right word. Be testament to this statement. Did someone ask a question?
Yes.
Or is someone just off mute? Okay, I'm going to carry on. So what we mean by a purchasing experience being risk-free is we don't typically take a customer onto our platform until we've shown them the value of their own data in the context of our platform's capabilities. And I find that incredibly refreshing. It's not drawn out. It's something as simple as a 5-minute CNAME update on your DNS, and we can show you the things that we see as risky and give you the information to make the decision to proceed or not. And I promise you there's no hard feelings if you say no. For Kums, yes. For me, less. Then the guarantee of P equals reject. I think this is a vital question to ask a vendor or ask anyone. How we can get you to P equals reject. Can you do it in 90 days though? So we guarantee this. We're the only DMARC vendor in the world that offers this. And I think this is hugely compelling because most of these projects, because of the nature of DMARC being so far outside of the typical and traditional infrastructure and security play, it gets forgotten about. There's a line item that's not really that expensive, so we don't really worry about it, and it just never happens. We are obviously hyper-focused in making sure it happens, and our average at the moment is around 61 days to get a customer to reject. I'm talking about Duane's Flower Shop. I'm talking right up to MTN and Old Mutual. The work is the same. It's just making sure that the authorized and unauthorized senders are legitimate. Spoken a bit about product features. What's your release cycle? How often do you launch huge innovation to the platform? What's your customer count? What's your biggest customer count? Can you deploy this across multiple countries? These are very important questions for large multinationals, but also important for you guys to understand scalability. Then the last thing, if I'm being lost here, am I still there? Okay, I'm still here. Okay. So the last thing I'll touch on is the pricing model. A lot of DMARC vendors make this stuff incredibly complex, right? It's based on domain. It's based on, a POC domain. Is this a domain that's a website only or an email domain? And that becomes very, very difficult to understand as you go back and forth from a commercial perspective. We've taken this as a very simple understanding of how to offer this to the market. And that is everyone's got users that use email. Those users will typically live across multiple domains, maybe one or two. So why don't we just charge a fixed cost per user that includes every single service we offer? And what I mean by that is the SPF delegation, DKIM alignment, the implementation, the ongoing SLA for support, so that both your present and the future state of your domains are taken care of in totality, right? If you do make large changes, G Suite to Microsoft, MailChimp to SendGrid, those kinds of things, you've got a partner that's going to make sure that these implementations last as long as your contract does, which I think is vitally important. There's no hidden costs to that. Kums, can I get a thumbs up if I'm still alive on the... Okay, good stuff.
You good? Your pitch is frozen, but I think go for it.
Okay, good stuff. I hope it's frozen in a good image. Otherwise, this is going to be embarrassing. Guys, I'm going to touch. There's a few more slides, and then I promise you we'll wrap this up. But one of the things that you undoubtedly heard of in the kind of last 12 months has been how these large mailbox providers are tightening the rules on email delivery. Okay, and I think this is hugely telling of the market in general for two reasons. The first is that if you look at the amount of mailboxes these three giants serve, it's probably in the billions, right? So there's not enough protection for the consumer, the guys that, marketing teams are sending mails to, because people are taking advantage of that. So we're seeing a lot of these guys putting in at least some form of legislation or regulation or standard to ensure that you are taking the responsibility of looking after their mailbox user. The second thing we've seen is that, typically the EU and Australia are always the leaders in terms of governmental legislation. So now you'll get, like Australia have made it mandatory. If you're dealing in financial services or insurance, you have to have a DMARC record, and it's got to be P equals reject. They've taken that kind of stance on this. The EU, they're asking for reasonable policies around your DNS, which includes the alignment of DKIM, SPF, and DMARC. But what I speak to, and Colin, which I'm sure you'll agree with, is a lot of customers think about DMARC and they go, but I don't send 5,000 emails a day. And it's like, absolutely, you might not. But you are only considering the emails coming from the bum on the seat, your employee. You are excluding invoicing, all your ERP, all your CRM emails, support tickets. You imagine a logistics business that sends out tracking emails, your mail, your parcels going from PE to Cape Town. That's tens of thousands a day, right? That's automated, coming from some form of ticketing system like Autodesk or Zendesk or whatever it is. One day, and they don't have the DMARC in place, all those mails fail. Imagine all your support tickets don't get sent to customers when they send you an email. Those are the kind of devastating impacts something as simple as DMARC could have on your domain. So again, I don't mean to sound ambulance chasey, but ultimately what I'm saying on this slide is that I do feel that when Microsoft gets involved, people's ears tend to peak up. When legislation and governmental regulation gets set specifically around DMARC being a project, people tend to speak up and listen up, especially in those regions. But ultimately, what I'm seeing here is a shift towards a far more responsible company that's looking after the interests of these people's mailboxes, which I think is phenomenal. So guys, in the interest of seeing and kind of like a social experiment, you'll see there's a QR code on the slide here. If I can ask you all to take a photo of this slide, this all implicitly assigns you to a contract with Sendmarc. No, I'm just joking. I really want to run a quick experiment where you guys look at seeing the domain score of your specific domain. So if you scan that, that's going to take you to a test site, and that test site will ask you for your email address. And essentially what that will immediately provide you with is a score out of 5 on your domain. 5 being the best protection, 1 being no protection or very little. And what I'd really like to see, just as a social experiment, is where our attendees today fit in on that scale. And then I want to touch on a little bit of that. So I'll give it a minute. It's now 12:30 on the button. At 12:30 and 41 seconds, I'll look at the results. So if you could please just run the QR code and then enter in your score. I'd love to talk through that in the next minute. Another 30 seconds. I feel like I'm testing someone's heartbeat. Okay, so while that continues to collect, what I love seeing about this, right, is that exactly as we generally see in these larger settings, is that a lot of the times when you address multiple domains, a lot of especially in a webinar setting, there's a lot of customers of ours that's already on the call, and 50% of the responses are leaning towards a 5 out of 5, right? So that means DMARC is in place, it's at reject, and it's in the correct status. There's another 40-odd% that's in the 3 and the 4. And those typically mean that you are in a reject state, or could mean that you're in a reject state, but that you have a high SPF lookup, right? That you are exceeding the 10 limit. And then 3 is that you are typically at P equals none or quarantine with no other supporting protocols in place. So simply just wanted to check out this. This is generally when we speak to new customers, they find themselves in the 3, the 2, or the 4 state, right? Like I'm at that point of readiness for P equals reject, and I just don't know what the next step is. The next step is including some form of way to get the insights in real time and have someone get you to that across your domain real estate, which is the most important thing. So guys, I promised you there'd be only 1 or 2 more slides. That was 1, and this is 2, right? So I think from our perspective, with the way in which we believe how DMARC should be implemented and how it should be thought about and addressed, not just today with the domains you have in place and the services that send mail on your behalf, but into the perpetuity of the ownership of those domains. There's really two ways that most customers choose to move forward here. The first is that there's a trial, right? Duane, this is great what you are saying. I hope you're all saying that. But I understand this completely. Definitely see value in this. We definitely like to see this. But I have 3 or 4 stakeholders that would be really excited to see this in real life. Absolutely. In that scenario, go onto our POC. It's absolutely free of charge. We send you a CNAME set of instructions. It's unique to you. It changes no configuration whatsoever in your DNS. It just allows us to get those aggregated reports. And then in 2 weeks, we invite those stakeholders to a meeting and we show them what we see as risky. We look at the unauthorized and the authorized senders, the attack patterns and sources, down to the specific country and IP of those attackers, where those emails were sent. They were sent from Russia. They were sent to a Gmail mailbox, and that was sent as delivered. We actually can go into that level of detail. And bringing up to speed those stakeholders in that more business outcome-focused environment is way better. The second way to do it is go, Duane, you've done a great job. I'm ready to go. I'm in all, and you can just accelerate, right? So that's where Kums and the team are going to be, reaching out to you guys and reaching out with next steps. Again, we take any one of these as a win as we move on with our journey to get more and more customers to P equals reject, which is why we're here. And with that, I will bid you farewell, and hopefully my frozen face will not scare the rest of you into anarchy this morning. But yeah, if there's any questions or concerns or clarity you guys want, we'll very, very happily take them off mute, or if you want to stick them in the chat, and definitely address them now if you'd like.
Amazing. Thank you, Duane. That was an exceptional presentation. That was very cool, and I hope all the guys. And the one thing I explicitly said to Duane, please don't mention free. He mentioned free a few times. No, I'm kidding. Reach out to your account managers, guys. We'd happily, very gladly do a POC for any of you guys. We've got most of your domains. And I think the big part of it to take out, which Duane, mentioned a few times, is it's your domain. You guys got to make sure, especially from an IT manager's point of view or from the team that manages that network, that domain has to be protected. It's on you. It's your responsibility when it comes to that domain. So if you guys need a POC, shout out to your account manager, shout out to me. We'd gladly jump on a call. And if you've got any questions, you can pop it in the chat. Otherwise, to everyone else, thanks for joining. If there's any, yes, there we go. Colin?
I don't have a question. I'll just share a story on the back of Duane mentioning the 5,000 email a day situation. When we went through this exercise, the amount of mails that we send as an organization is 10 times what we thought it was. What was also interesting is turns out we were sending mail from Croatia, from India, from America. We have little apps that send reports from monitoring tools. Some are in Ireland. So if you think you only send a couple of hundred emails a day, think again. It's way more than you think. And we've seen the same thing with customers.
And that actually brings up, we sat at a school committee meeting last night. Yes, I'm on a school committee meeting. And what one of the principals was saying is that we don't seem to be getting enough leads through our website. So all kids trying to apply, we don't get those emails. And again, something as simple as a DMARC record is breaking that, right? Because the DNS is automatically failing that domain because it's illegally spoofing the email coming from their own domain, but it's being sent from a different source, right? And because they're not trusted, they're literally not getting leads for new kids to join the school. Now, that in and of itself is worth fixing, right? Because 1 additional or 2 additional kids that actually get through that process is much, much, more valuable than the price of DMARC, So it's another applicable use case, which I thought adds nicely to kind of Colin's story there.
Yeah, so thanks, Duane. Thanks, Colin. If there's any other questions, if anyone else has any questions or any interesting stories, we've got a couple of minutes to spare. We can bounce a few ideas or any concerns. Other than that, yeah, reach out to your account managers, guys. Let us know. We'd be very happy to jump on a call and chat to you guys and go through the whole exercise for you. Yeah, and enjoy your lunch. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Duane.
Thanks, Duane.
Thanks
Thanks,
very
guys.
much.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Yes, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks all. Ciao.